All right, we're back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, bringing you our third segment, and it's going to be part of what we did last segment, which is one young player on each team. I think should be an extension candidate. We've seen it as a trend in baseball, and I think these players could be it for their teams and be extended and be part of a big future for them. We're going to start off with the Mets. And I talked about it before, Francisco Alvarez. This is the easy choice. There were some extension rumors yesterday from Hector Gomez about him being extended and that he was close to it. If you know anything about the baseball social media sphere and pay attention to people, Hector Gomez is extremely hit or miss, more hit than miss. But when he does hit, it's on something big. So we thought maybe it's possible. But Andy Martino, who I also mentioned before, one of the better guys for New York sports, insider information, talked about how it's not happening right now, but both sides have interest, and it's something that could happen in the future. So I think extending Alvarez makes a ton of sense for the Mets. He's obviously he's a future star. He's a future face of the organization. The Mets have a lot of young players coming up in this young core that they got mostly from the deadline last year with all the trades they made. And I think Alvarez should be at the forefront of that, being the first real superstar catcher the Mets have had since Mike Piazza. He's shown flashes of being great, and I think extending him would make a lot of sense. He said he's open to an extension as well. He seems to love being a Met, love New York spotlight, so extending Alvarez makes a ton of sense for the Mets, and I think it would be a really wise decision for new president of baseball operations, David Stearns. Next, we're going to talk about the Phillies here. I have Johan Rojas. Rojas is interesting. He kind of came out of nowhere last year and took the Phillies starting center fielder job and ran with it. Had a really great season, played great defense, was a pretty good hitter, and brought an element to center field for the Phillies that hasn't been there in a little while now, kind of plugging and playing defensive first guys. And I think getting Rojas is really important to them, and keeping him long term should also be really important. Extending him now, you would ensure that he's going to be your center fielder for the long term. You make sure that you have a guy in center field there for a little while. Make sure that he is your guy and that he is there for a good amount of time and that you believe in him as well. And you don't think it was just a one-year fluke. Marlins, this one's also easy. Yuri Perez. Yuri Perez was one of the top starting pitcher prospects in baseball for a little while. He is so good. He's so good. And I think the Marlins extending him would make a ton of sense with where they are. They need to extend their young stars in being in a small market. Yuri is going to be a future superstar, future ace for the Marlins. They have a good amount of aces on that pitching staff, even one that's hurt like Alcantara. But I think Yuri Perez is so good, and I think extending him right now would just make a ton of sense for the Marlins and what they're trying to do. The Braves. This was really hard to pick because basically all their young players they've extended already. Ronald Acuna, Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris, Spencer Strider, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy. Like, they've extended all of their team. Even Acuna, who I didn't mention for some reason. We know this as baseball fans. But I think looking to the pitching side now, where they've only extended one guy, which is Spencer Strider, I think A.J. Smith-Shawver could be an interesting extension candidate. He's a really good pitcher, factors into the future of that Braves pitching staff that might look a lot different next year with Max Fried and Charlie Morton probably being gone. You extend him, make him a long-term piece of that pitching staff, get him a spot, work with him, and I think it would make a lot of sense for the Braves to extend A.J. Smith-Shawver and make him a long-term part of that future as well. Next, we have the Nationals. This might be a little crazy. You might call me insane for this, but I think it's Dylan Cruz. Dylan Cruz is so good. He's so good. He was second overall pick last year for a reason. He's going to be an insane hitter right off the gate. He's going to come up very early with the Nationals this year. I'd probably say May or June. Maybe I'm reaching, but I think he's so good. He's going to be a great player, going to hit right away, and I think the Nationals extending him would be a very wise decision. They have a lot of good young players, but they're looking for a guy who can really build around, be that superstar, be their Bryce Harper, be their Juan Soto. Both guys are gone now, obviously, so they need a new one. Why not add another outfielder? Dylan Cruz. He's so good. They picked him at 2 for a reason. He was a top prospect for a long time for a reason. He's a great player, and I think makes a lot of sense as an extension candidate for the Nationals. Next, we're going to go on to the Central now. I'm going to move to the Pirates, and I think an extension candidate here is Henry Davis. Henry Davis was the first overall pick for the Pirates. He's very good. He's a very good hitter. I think is one of the future stars of that young Pirates team. I don't know if he's going to stick a catcher long term, but even if he doesn't, he's still a really good hitter. He's going to be a really good player wherever he does play, just because of that hitting ability. I think he could mold into a catcher, a really good defensive one, but it will take some time, as it will for all young players, especially catchers with how hard that position is. I think it makes a lot of sense. They do have Endy Rodriguez there, but he's hurt. And if I'm picking between Endy and I'm picking between Henry, I'm going Henry Davis all the time. I think he's a great player, a great hitter, and going to be a future star for the Pirates. Speaking of another great young hitter, let's go to the Cardinals, and we have Jordan Walker. Jordan Walker is great. He's a great hitter. He was a top prospect in baseball for a long time for a reason. Didn't have the best season last year, but I think you can, if you find him a position he can learn defense at and just focus on hitting, it would be great. I think he's more of a DH first base type long term, just because he isn't a great fielder. I would have traded Paul Goldschmidt actually in the deadline or in the offseason, open up a spot for Jordan Walker and specifically all those other young players as well. You have just so many young hitters, and you're kind of in a retool phase right now with where the pitching's at. So I think moving Goldschmidt would have made sense, and moving Walker there, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Yeah, I think extending Jordan Walker, making him a part of that core for a long time would make a ton of sense and would be really nice for the Cardinals and their fans who don't have much positive things going on right now. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be very good this year, but we never know. The Brewers, I'm going to go William Contreras here. Obviously was acquired in a big trade with the Braves in the offseason. Was an all-star with the Braves, then got traded to the Brewers. Played very, very well, hit very, very well. Has shown to be their catcher of the future. I think is going to be a future star for the Brewers. I think extending him would make a lot of sense for this young team. Getting him in the core of guys like Jackson Chourio, who was already extended, Sal Frelick, other guys as well. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Brewers to extend Contreras, make him a part of their long-term future. And it's for a reason. He's really, really good. He's a really good hitter, a really great catcher, a really great player. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Next, we have the Reds. I'm going to go with one of their millions of young infielders here, and I'm going to go with Matt McLain. Matt McLain was great last year. He was great. First-round pick. Came up, just hit the ball. Had an amazing season. It's probably going to be the shortstop of the future for the Reds, and extending him now with, you're not in the biggest market in Cincinnati. You always have to wonder about your young players wanting to go to a different market, wanting to play somewhere else just because of the money and how smaller of a market Ohio is. Someone who's a fan of some Ohio teams, I understand that as well. Not just being biased because I'm from New York. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Reds to extend McLain, make him a part of that long-term future immediately, and get him as one of the faces of your franchise. Builds around him with guys like Noelvi Marte, with Ellie De La Cruz, other guys as well. So the Cubs, I talked about him a few times now in the last few episodes, and it's because I love him. I think he's amazing, and I think he's one of the better prospects in baseball and going to be one of the better center fielders in baseball. We're talking about the Cubs. You know who I'm talking about. It's Pico Armstrong. PCA is going to be such an amazing fielder right off the bat. And I think once he gets his hitting down, once he becomes an above-average hitter, he's going to become an amazing player in the league. You do have some questions with the bat, which is, you do have to look out for, but I think those are fixable. I think he's going to be a future star for the Cubs, and if I'm the Cubs, I'm extending him right now before he gets too expensive. Market him as a big part of your future. Give Craig Counsell a franchise guy right away. Add him in with Dansby Swanson, Justin Steele, other parts of that core. And I think it makes a lot of sense if the Cubs were to extend Pico Armstrong and look forward and look towards to do it right now. So, yeah. Moving on to the last division here, the NL West. We're going to talk about the reigning NL champions, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think Jordan Lawler is their extension candidate. He is probably not going to start the year in the big leagues, But I think once he does, you probably give him a contract extension. He's a top pick for a reason in the draft. He's a really good player, really good shortstop. He's probably going to stick there long term as well, which is always important. Hits the ball really well, really good defender, nice speed, good athlete. Makes just a ton of sense for the D-backs to get him as part of the long-term core. Him, Corbin Carroll, the other guys they have as well. Corbin Carroll, of course, already being extended. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's something the D-backs should explore if they want to keep this core around for as long as possible, because it's going to get expensive at some point whenever your young guys hit free agency, which we've seen with some other teams as well. So maybe getting above that and trying to get ahead of that is very important for Arizona. The Dodgers, I'm going to go with James Outman here. Could have been some other candidates to go with, but I went with Outman. I think Outman is the center fielder of the future for the Dodgers. Had a great season last year being Cody Bellinger's replacement. Showed a great flash with the glove, being a really good hitter, tall lefty bat. I think he's going to be really good for the long term, and I think he's someone the Dodgers can build around, as they needed more young star players to build around. So yeah, I think Outman to an extension with the Dodgers make a ton of sense, and is something the Dodgers should explore definitely. The Giants, Patrick Bailey. Patrick Bailey has proven to be a franchise catcher with the Giants. Kind of overshadowed his former second overall pick Joey Bart, who's looking like a bust right now. You extend Patrick Bailey. It is interesting with catchers because catchers don't necessarily age well because of just the stress they get on their knees. But if he's a really good player and you believe in him, maybe you view it as an outlier that he's someone who can be a long-term catcher. I think getting Bailey an extension, you would have him as your franchise catcher, the one to take over from Buster Posey's retirement. Makes a lot of sense, and I think it's something that should be explored by the Giants. Again, he is a catcher, so I understand if there are some questions about that, but it makes a lot of sense for the Giants to do that and have Patrick Bailey as their new franchise catcher, the successor to Mr. Buster Posey, one of the greatest of all time. The Padres. Again, I'm going to go with another shortstop who has not made the MLB yet, and that's Jackson Merrill. If I'm the Padres, I'm giving Jackson Merrill every single chance to make the MLB roster opening day that I can. He's one of the better prospects in baseball, probably top 5. He's so good. He's going to be really good for a long time. He's going to start in AAA. You give him an extension now. You lock him up. You did it with Tatis. I don't see why you can't do it with Merrill. He's going to be a future superstar in San Diego, and he's a really, really good player that from the Padres I'm looking to extend right now and following that trend of young players getting extensions. And finally, we'll end off with the Rockies. Nolan Jones, I guess. He's a really good player. He had a breakout season from Cleveland last year after a trade over. But it's the Rockies. We don't really know what they're going to do. They're very confusing. If you've watched my streams and videos the past few days, you know I'm not very fond of the Rockies and their organization. I don't really think they have a plan of what's going on there. But I think extending Nolan Jones, finally having some face the franchise there would be a good idea after the Chris Bryant situation was a bust. So it could make a ton of sense for the Rockies to extend Nolan Jones and make him a big part of that future. So that was segment 3. Talked about young National League extension candidates. We're going to take a break. Before we do that, we'll talk about segment 4 quickly, and that's going to be news around the league, just some general stories I wanted to touch on and see what's going on with them, and I think are really interesting to talk about. So we'll go to a break, and we'll see you on the other side and talk about it. So thanks, yeah.